that is our job as developers or home builders or architects is, we are to pull people into our stories and get them engrossed and get them to care about what we care about. And sometimes that's what I generally find the problem is that developers care about something and consumers care about something, but those cares need to match.
I'm Monica Hollins.
I'm Lauren Brown.
I have about 25 years building community with both private and government entities.
And for more than 15 years, I've been creating events and experiences from corporate gatherings with 5,000 to 6,000 people to neighborhood events through HOAs and lifestyle.
About 15 years in HOA management, starting as a lifestyle director and moving to a community manager. But the entire time really focusing on building that community all the way through.
I'm currently the program director for a leading developer in Idaho.
I started my own company, Outside the Box Consulting. That's where I really work with developers on one end to make sure that we're building amenities that are intentional and that are going to be activated. And then on the flip side, I work with HOA management companies and I train lifestyle directors. And I have to say that's one of my favorite things I get to do.
I really just truly believe that lifestyle is the heartbeat of a community, and I'm really excited that I get to do that day in and day out, and I'm excited to chat about it with you and all of our lifestyle friends.
Welcome to Lifestyle Unplugged with Monica
and Lauren.
Today's episode is truly special because we're joined by someone whose work has shaped the way we think about community, connection, and the power of place. Kevin Ervin Kelley is the co-founder of Shook Kelley, a nationally recognized strategic design firm known for its philosophy of convene, the belief that extraordinary places aren't just beautiful, they are intentionally designed to bring people together. He is also the author of Irreplaceable, How to Create Extraordinary Places That Bring People Together, a book that resonates strongly with our audience because it explores why people crave meaning and belonging in the places where they live, work, and gather. Kevin, we are so excited to have you on with us today.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be with you. I'm super excited about this discussion.
I will say, as I was kind of pulling together your bio, I could have been here for another 30 minutes reading a bio on you. It was really hard to make it short and succinct. So we're just so honored that you are joining us today and being able to talk about having the experience more than just the physical building of places, to what makes things special. I want to kind of kick it off really quick. So there is one image that I can't get out of my head, and it's chapter 6. So I'm jumping way ahead. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go a little out of order here, but it's when you're talking about the movie night with your daughter, Kaya, and how, movies have come from a digital standpoint into our homes, which makes it really convenient, but it doesn't make it all that special, especially when we're looking to do something different. Can you explain that experience with her and how you painted that picture for everyone in the book?
Sure. There's so many different aspects we could pull from that. I mean, I'd start with saying that, the medium of film is such an amazing, powerful tool, and that it can take people off the streets, get them to pay a price to sit in a dark room full of strangers and laugh, scream, even cry in front of a bunch of people you've never met before. And you forget about your light bill. You forget about the taxes. You forget about everything, which is pretty amazing. And you have this collective experience that's really powerful. It's primal. It's like a storytelling experience. And we take for granted how difficult it is for a director to get you interested and engaged in their story in milliseconds in every scene. And that is what an architect does. It's what a developer does, or should be doing at least. But we spend so much of our time looking at plans, which is not how we experience the world. We stand vertical, we walk forward, we don't walk sideways, and we have a certain aperture. And our brain is wired to take a giant mass amount of information and decide what's so important, such as the gun in the drawer, just the shadow in the background of a movie, right? We notice these things and we can put together so much information by little tiny bits, which is really powerful. And so one of the principles that we really, and concepts we use, is the idea of scene making. And so we break every experience, whether it is a grocery store, an automotive dealership, a large housing development, an arena, an orchestra, into scenes. And we have a whole series of principles around how scenes work. We say there's a beginning and a middle and an end to a scene. It needs to have a mini climax in the middle of that. That mini climax needs to be based on values, because the only thing that's going to get you engaged in a film is something that, interests you, and it either needs to upset you or, tempt you or seduce you. Almost everything in a film is about creating a world. Either the world starts in balance and goes out of balance, or it's out of balance and it comes into balance. And the protagonist is putting it back in balance. And where this really applies to so much of what we're doing is I encourage my clients, again, whether they're stores or developers, to ask themselves deeply, how is the world out of balance right now? What's wrong with the world? Because a lot of times they don't know even where to start. And then I really encourage them to say, then your brand, your company, your facility, your development plans need to put the world back in balance. That's what people are looking for, and that's what they're going to buy into. And they're going to look at your values. And so the sales center right off the bat is the first scene, and how does that unfold? And most of this is subconscious. When you're a movie, you don't think about any of this stuff because the brain doesn't need to. And I will go on and on about that, but I'll stop there and shift to my daughter, Kaya. So I love film and really use a lot of film concepts in the work we do. But it was essentially a pandemic baby. She was born in 2018, halfway through 2018. She was finally of the age to kind of, go see movies, but couldn't see movies, and developed almost all her movie habits online with thousands of movies, right? It's shocking how many movies. I've seen Frozen 7,000 times, twice on weekends, and I've been through all of that. And so one day, slowly as the pandemic was leaving, I had a wild idea. I asked my wife, I was like, what if we took her to a movie? And I remember we both said, will she like it? I don't know. And our daughter's a homebody. I should say that. She almost always, my wife and I find it so funny because she's much rather stay home. She's like, oh, we have to go eat. Because again, she grew up in the pandemic, right? And she never understood when we sat down at a restaurant. And she's like, we ordered our food, and she go, where is the food? And I'm like, well, they're making it. Because she was used to
so funny
getting her food. And the whole idea of ordering or waiting in line, that was the worst part. She's like, crap, we have to wait. And so all of that it was all new to her. And so the first time we took her to a movie theater, again, she's a homebody and more introverted. And we took her to a movie, and all of a sudden she became somebody else at the end of the movie. She was dancing and singing, and, she sat in the chair with a giant bucket of popcorn and dangled her feet. And we got in the car, and she said, Dad, when can we do that again? Oh, and I was like, well, we'll do it again next month. And she said, I want to do it every week. Oh. So we don't do it every week, but we do it about 2 to 3 times a month. Oh. And she just loves it. That's awesome. Such a powerful moment for her. And I think there's something about obviously leaving home and going out to a place and being a part of that collective experience and being a part of other people. And there are a lot of psychologists that studied what is that power, but it's kind of an emotional and social synchronicity that happens when we sync up with those around us. Yeah. And we experience this at rock concerts. We experience it in art world. It is related to the sense of awe, and what happens to us when we reach a sense of awe is that we stop thinking about ourselves and start thinking about something much bigger, which is highly therapeutic. Yeah, so I hope that makes sense. I could go on and on.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going with it. And what also resonates with what you're just saying to me is the mall, right? For so long, people were saying the mall is dying. And then especially when COVID happened, everyone's like, oh, we're not going to need malls anymore. But there is something nice. And it goes back to being around people and having that connection with people to go shopping, even if you're not buying anything, though probably some of our listeners want to be buying as they go shopping. Mm-hmm. Don't blame you. But even if that's not your main goal, it's just going out. Mm-hmm. And you talk about that in your book, about just going out and being among other people and having those experiences, those shared experiences. You talk about it at the Grove and why you take a lot of your clients to the Grove. Mm-hmm. Can we just kind of launch off of that and just about people being together and I guess kind of the magic of convening, so to speak?
Yeah. I never start any of my assignments with I know everything and this is the way it's going to be. I'm also willing to accept my own biases mm-hmm. as somebody that believes in the built world. And so I try to look at all these things from a sober perspective. In fact, when I wrote Irreplaceable, it wasn't called that. And I was really, the issue I was really looking at is, what is the fate of place in a mm-hmm. digital world where convenience and everything can be delivered to you in pajamas, and
so
the doorstep. Entertainment, dating is done online, products, everything is done online. So why go out? And what's the harm if we don't go out? And we have become, or at least we really were becoming, such a linear, concrete efficiency society. The tech industry is really built of a lot of linear thinkers that get rid of inefficiencies, and friction became the enemy. And so, combing your hair was friction, and going out and dressing up for neighbors was friction. And I really started looking at the basis of society. And if you go back through civilization, the center of town wasn't the church like most people think about, and nor was it the seat of government. It was always the marketplace. And it was called different things. It was called the bazaar. It was called the ancient agora. And people didn't just go there to exchange money for products or services. They went to exchange hellos and conversations, traditions, rituals, and ideas. And it's actually how we learned to be more civil, by just being around other people. And it helped us. And it helped us learn about others. And that idea has been around forever. And the problem we have sometimes with the term mall is it conjures up 1980s idea primarily, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Mean Girls. We could go on and on. Yes. And those buildings, were kind of not the center of town always. They didn't have a lot of transparency. They got associated heavily with materialism and vanity, and that isn't really what they are. They're town squares and villages. Now they need to be reskinned and they need to be redeveloped, which is why we generally encourage people don't even use the word mall and strike it from your lexicon. But it also needs not to look like a mall. Agreed. So it really needs to look like a community, and it needs to foster pro-social community. And we tend to award malls based on their aesthetics, when really what we need to reward and measure them on is their ability to engender belonging and to foster pro-socialness. And that's what in my mind should be the award winners. And so they're not going away. We've certainly thinned them down, but a lot of that had to do with overbuilding and a lot of larger macro issues. For many, decades, we didn't have enough retail in society all across pockets of America. And then we really overbuilt. So now we have an oversupply and not enough demand. But the demand isn't going to be created by making cheaper products. That race, that contest is going to be, owned by Amazon and Walmart and the commoditizers who are doing well. Their goal is to kind of debrand everything and make everything seem like it's just about price. But for those in the business of place, or those that have a place or experience as part of their business model, they need to really focus on what is it we can do beyond commodity. And that is the sense of community, the sense of belonging, the sense of interaction that happens. And if I could extend this concept, we take it for granted and we don't really realize it, but we are sensory-based beings. A baby learns to smell first, then our eyes and ears and other senses develop. And just like a dog has to go out for a walk, humans have to activate their senses. And what activates it is unfamiliarity, it's novelty. And so we need to go out and experience different things. And so much of what I see in the architecture world, the development world, even the business world, never starts with the senses. And if you want to get any idea into a person's head, if you want to influence them in any way, you have to start with the senses first. And why is that so important? Because our brain is running off a 60-watt light bulb, and it doesn't have a lot of energy to figure things out, so it delegates a lot to our senses. And our senses are making decisions all day long for us. It's generally looking for two things: enhancement and impediments to life. And when things feel safe, and that means physically, socially, emotionally, people tend to relax and engage. When things feel unsafe, such as in an alleyway or dark lit street, then we don't feel as social. And so our goal as designers and developers and home builders is to go, how can we make people feel safe enough to approach a stranger and have a conversation?
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
Love that.
Going back a little bit to your movie theater and talking about scenes, first of all, I love that because we have in my job right now just this core group of people that's really focused on what it is we're trying to create. And we've really been running with the idea of we need to create scenes. So that was really cool to hear you say that. And then also when I was in San Diego in October, I went to this winery. And again, it made me think of your book because it advertises itself as the oldest winery. Not sure if it really is, but when you walk in, it creates this entire scene of like an old Western town. And it's got the little mercantiles and stores. It's got a restaurant. It's got the tasting room, a fudge shop. And you're immersed, like you're in this little village. And you're all there for the wine tasting. But next thing you know, you're shopping and talking to all these people. And you would never talk to people like you do at the restaurant there that you would like in a regular restaurant. So it was just really cool to see how they were able to bring you in and remove the outside world.
Yeah. And you know, I'm an architect, and in my industry has this ability to intellectualize everything and to turn it into talkitecture and to try to get everybody to go to this kind of Grey Poupon brie cheese lifestyle when a lot of people like Velveeta and French mustard.
Yeah.
And it's aggravating on one sense, and a lot of it is not what the public wants. And so one of the great criticisms that architects like to use is this idea that a place is derivative, that it's already been done, and that we have this obsessive need to invent. We also have this preoccupation with object making, and as opposed to social facilitation. And so one of the criticisms that I see often leveled at a place is that it's too themey, or it's not inventive enough, or it's derivative. But what you just described is a place that provides escape. And, you know, we have themes all the time. I look at a Jeep and it's a theme. I look at these Land Rovers that have never seen dirt in their life. And, you know, they're designed for deserts, and people are afraid to take them off road. We go to Italian restaurants. We go to Western themed restaurants. We go to a variety of things. We escape all the time because escape's fun. Now, I will admit there's a fine line in escape. Just like a movie, right? We all see a movie and we're like, that's too much. The jump the shark idea. And when we jump the shark, we don't like it. But when a place can take us to another world and it has a set of rules, you know, we call it world making. So can you create a set of rules and a set of behaviors? And one of the things you might remember from the book, and it gets a little, you know, abstract and esoteric, but, you know, we're generally asking 3 or 4 questions when we're looking at a place. It may be a resort, it may be a vacation destination, it may be development. It could be any number of places, but we normally say, who do I become while here? If I go to the orchestra, who do I become? I don't become a sports fan at an orchestra. I become classy, and I dress a certain way. I become cultured.
Mhm.
Second question is, what will happen to me? How will I be transformed? And sometimes people go, you won't be transformed. And then that really begs the question, why go out? Just about everything in life is about moving in a sense of being transformed. I'm going to buy this product that's going to save my hair or my teeth or my image. These are things that people are looking for. So where everybody's at point B, how do you take them? I mean, point A, how do you take them to point B? The third question we normally ask is, how do I know how to act? How does a place tell me how to act? And there are certain restaurants where you can break peanuts and throw them on the floor, and that's totally acceptable. When I took my uncle to a very fancy restaurant and he did that, I said, you can't put peanuts on the floor. He brought his own peanuts. But these are things that people are subconsciously looking at. And if a place has none of that, then it kind of dies. And so one of the, I'll link it back to something we talked about earlier. One of the problems I have with a lot of the current malls being designed, and it goes beyond malls, is that they try to be cultured in a conscious way. They try to be cool in a conscious way, have a certain look, but they don't really take you to an escape. But there are certain people, a lot of these outdoor malls, but in the book I reference, Rick Caruso did The Grove. He takes you to somewhere between Europe and the Miracle on 34th Street. And that is a great escape. It's really fun. It's a sense of temporary community and people getting along and walking around in a certain way without a sense of purpose, without a deliberateness.
Exactly.
And the product isn't the stores. The product is the socialization and that sense of temporary community.
So that launches into third places becoming very prominent in the design of communities, master plan communities. We're seeing that mixed use communities are becoming something that is more popular again. It's not just a standard, suburban, just homes scattered, but people want to be able to walk to places. They want to be able to connect in a place other than their community center, their clubhouse. That third place is really starting to be something that a lot of developers are talking about and creating. And I know that you talk about this, but why do you think it's the third place resonates so much more than the standard clubhouse?
Yeah, it's interesting. The term came from a urban sociologist named Ray Oldenburg, who was a friend of mine and was actually going to write the foreword to my book. Okay. But he passed away during the pandemic, which was unfortunate.
I'm so sorry.
But he and I had many conversations, and he was just amazing, and in terms of his understanding of why these communities are so needed. But more than ever right now, community isn't a luxury, and that's what we tend to look at. It's kind of a resilience system. It's almost the only thing that can kind of get us through these difficult times that many Americans are facing right now. And so particularly young people who are experiencing the highest unemployment, the highest levels of debt, the lowest likelihood of getting jobs or even buying a home. I mean, these are pretty massive threats. They were sold a bill of goods that really isn't paying out for them. And so they're frustrated. So community it's a survival mechanism. And so they're not looking at these things as amenities. They're looking at it as necessary for them. And that question, when you move into a place, whether you're renting or buying, those questions I mentioned, who do I become while here? What will happen to me? How will I know how to act? They're gauging that heavily on what's happening in between the buildings, what's happening outside of the space. We survey a lot of young people to figure out what are the issues bothering them. Way back in the 90s, it used to really be getting a home, getting a job. Well, getting a job first, getting a home, and finding my significant other. It's breaking my heart, but young people are giving up on the ability to buy a home now. It's just in the current sentiment, it is not there. But they still are looking for their significant other. And they're trying to find ways to make that happen through activities. Again, in the past, we did that a lot through bars and restaurants and drinking, and that just isn't playing out anymore. And so people are looking for new ways. Pickleball, as you know, has been giant, but there are other things. So something I'd suggest, for all of my clients is not to fixate so much on what's new. And that tends to be, I speak at a lot of conferences throughout the year, and every conference is AI dominated. And everybody's going to AI and they're spending massive amounts of money on AI, huge capital. When I think the question we need to be asking is what is missing? And what is missing isn't more frictionless environments. What isn't missing is more content to watch at home. What's missing is how can I socialize with people? How can I come together in a safe environment? And people are really looking for that. I think this, there's so much weight on this sense of community. It's become a kind of our healthcare system in a way. You see why gyms are so popular and why tech med and a variety of other things are all coming together in very exciting ways.
Yeah, that's really good. Wellness. Just a couple of things. The average age now of a first-time home buyer is the age of 40. So to your point, which is crazy.
And I bought my first home at 24.
I did too.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
a small condo, but it set me on a path, and I was
Exactly.
able to roll that into the next one and the next one and the next one.
So I just wanted to kind of put that out there because everything you're saying is so right on. And I've read many articles about, the Gen Z. Is that Gen Alpha? I am losing track of all of our generations here, but how they crave experiences more than any other group
Yeah.
because they want that connection.
They're the group that grew up with cell phones in their hand. And, they're the ones saying, I didn't get anything from that. And, we as well spent a lot of time studying generational differences, and people tend to forget this. As much as we have a need to belong, we also have a need to differentiate ourselves. It is a very strong drive in us. So we want to belong to community, but then we want to stand out in the community. And so we belong to our families, but then we want to be different. I mean, kids always want to differentiate from their parents. They listen to different music, they wear different clothes. And part of that is to rebel against, obviously, that. But one of the ways young people are really rebelling is resurrecting a lot of things from the past, really the grandfather's era, our grandmother's era, and they're pulling this back. They are single-handedly one of the biggest drivers up malls. 58% of Generation Z shops at malls. I mean, that's shocking.
That's a lot.
And they're very into thrifting because
They
vintage
Yes.
is in.
they are so into that. I'm going to a thrifting event this weekend, and
I love it.
Again, that question of what's in balance, what's out of balance, not what's new, but what's missing. Vintage is a perfect answer to that. And a lot of people are saying, well, things got too showy. And I don't want to pick on any group, but the reality show stars ended up showing money too much. And then the audience said they got turned off by that. So now they're looking. I saw an article the other day, it was fascinating, that said the beat up expensive bag is in vogue now. So you don't want a new bag. It needs to be
Got to be worn.
Yeah.
Well,
Drug behind the car.
I'm on trend then. We're good.
That reminds me of when I was a kid when the dirty jeans came in to trend. I was a farm girl, so I was like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. Paint on them, all that. Me too. I grew up in the woods.
I can
It's
make those and
amazing.
sell them.
Yeah.
So you had just talked about the need for the community experiences. And that's where our lifestyle directors are so instrumental in these communities because that's what they're creating, right? They're creating these experiences for people to come together and get to know each other. And we look at them as community connectors. They're not just event planners. We talk about that all the time. They're really there to create a sense of place for the residents, for people to get to know their neighbors, and be able to feel a sense of connection with the people that live around them and live in their communities. And so the reason I kind of wanted to to go there, which in turn turns into the bonfire effect that she's going to talk about. But I just want to talk about how the community experience is such an important role for community associations and communities in general. But can you to kind of talk about like kind of nurturing that and how imperative that is?
Yeah. I've spent my entire career observing people and really even before I started my career, kind of a professional voyeur, neurotic observer, watching what happens to people, and have built a whole career and a whole system based on that. And one of the things that fascinates us is that strangers generally won't talk to strangers without a device. We need something, and it does break down heavily in gender, what in terms of what we see on videotape and what we see through our field observations. And that I'll start with men because it's easiest. Men need an object. They need something. And so motorcycles is a great object that men will talk about. So we do a lot of work for Harley Davidson and, everything, the way they squat down and look at the bike, they literally put their finger on what we call the Plato's pose. They talk about how they're going to customize that bike, and men need a device, lawnmower, golf clubs, sports, anything. And we will track them in, and you'll be shocked. It might take them 3 months to 2 years to say something personal and vulnerable about their life. It's just the way they've been sociologicalized. We will watch women interact in groups, sometimes meet each other for the first time over coffee and start talking about very intimate details very quickly. And we're eavesdropping and we're like, we're just shocked sometimes. But the device, yeah, right. Should she tell him her husband's having an affair? And it just happens really quickly in a different scenario. This whole issue of gender is always a dicey topic. But I can just tell you, just from the way we watch men and women shop is completely different. The way we watch parents shop with children, depending on the gender, is completely different. Boys wheelie the cart, pull the can out from the stand. The daughters actually help in the chore and go get stuff and bring back. It's just fascinating to observe. The walking speed people walk in is radically different. And so what really helps facilitate community as a device. It's something that can break the ice. And there really is this issue of kind of passive scenarios. So there could be a lake or a mountain view or something like that. But that generally doesn't get people to come together. They will sit a certain distance apart. But if we have something for them to engage in and something for them to talk about, then we can break that ice. And we have conversation starters. So that is one of the most difficult challenges for anybody building community, is to get that first step in. In the Harley world, I'll use that again, is that, when we'll meet with a Harley dealer and they're trying to grow their business and they're like, we don't know where the customers are. And they're almost always on a road. And we're like, well, they're driving by your store every day, 60,000 of them are driven by your store today. And all you need is 1% or even 0.5%. And your business is fine, but they won't come in because many of them are worried they can't pull it off. A lot of us have social anxiety about trying something new, whether it's a club, community. It's just very hard to do that. So social proof helps a lot if we can see other people doing something. If I can extend this, and you're experts at this, but we have worked for a couple of home builders, a series of them, more than a couple, and whenever we start an assignment, we don't know where the big ideas are going to come from. In 33 years, I never have the answer day one. It's a terrifying experience. But I know if I go and look for two things, if I look for anomalies, anything that is outside the norm or somebody said something, that's really great. And if I look at humor, if I look at what internal workers say, some insight, because that's when they're speaking the truth. Humor is the truth. And so I have to get them out of the conference room and out in the parking lot or in a pub or somewhere. And then all of a sudden they will tell me. We were working with a major home builder who had this theory of pulling people into a literally narrow doorway room and making them watch a video and then trying to stand in front of the door and get them to sell. They had read all this theory about kind of selling. To us, it all seemed high pressure. But as we started looking at other aspects, they had an event on a Tuesday night in a clubhouse as they were touring new people through. And I said, well, what's happening here? And they said, well, on Tuesday nights, the residents come and have a little event. And then somebody said is on this island, he goes, ironically, it's our biggest night we ever close, Tuesday night. We took that a little anomaly and we drilled down deeper into that. What we found was those customers who were prospective customers saw other people like them and said, I'm kind of like that guy. I could relate to that guy. So then we started developing places that weren't about a sales center, but were much more of a wine bar and inviting people up. And we encourage residents to come every day so that the prospective audience could see themselves and see other people. Now I'm skipping out. How do we even get them in the car and get them there? And how do we get them through looking at the options? But breaking that ice, looking for social proof and helping people pull it off. I'll link it back to one other quick item in the Harley world. What we found was everybody is nervous about, can they pull off the bike? Can they pull off the leathers? We found something as simple as putting a mirror in front of a rider when they're sitting on the bike. They say, you know what? It's not as big as I thought. Or if we took a Polaroid of them and gave them a Polaroid, they would take that home as opposed to a sales contract. And it's a very powerful thing. We then started taking all the Polaroids and putting them on the wall. So we'd have a whole wall of people that bought a brand new motorcycle, and they had a smile on their face that looked like they were 12 years old with their new bike. And people were looking at this photo saying, I want that. And this is directly related to buying a home. As I said earlier to you, how will I be transformed? What will happen to me?
Yeah, that's really cool. So I want to talk about the bonfire effect. When I was reading your book, it kind of made me laugh because when I got hired at my job, my boss at the time had told me that he was going to call me Sparky. The nickname didn't stick, but it was a really good way for him to explain to me. He's like, I see you as the spark to light the fire within the communities. So that's with great. That, can you kind of talk about the bonfire effect for our listeners and share how you think lifestyle directors, community creators, and, you know, all of us could kind of help create these scenarios?
Yeah. Again, I mentioned this, that I was just kind of always a voyeur and kind of a neurotic observer of human behavior. And so when I was a young kid growing up and all the way through my teens, I lived in a place right out near the Everglades swamps. And we didn't have anything to do. There weren't any stores. There weren't any orchestras around. But every weekend, everybody would go out to a place called the Mud Flats. And everybody has this kind of place. But it was about 2 miles out in the middle of the woods. And most of it was covered in water. But in the middle of that 2 mile was a mound that rose up like a French Riviera. It was our redneck Riviera. And to get there, you would have to build these Mad Max vehicles. You'd have to build pickup trucks and airboats and everything to get out there. And it was hot, and there was mosquitoes and alligators and water moccasins.
Nope.
And people were bored, and, you know, a lot of competing high schools would go, and people would often get in fights. But the real powerful moment that really happened was, without any director doing this, a group of people, a self-organizing group, would build a bonfire, and people would gather around that bonfire and have this incredible emotional synchronous moment. And I was always fascinated. Well, what is that? And as I got older, I learned that many psychologists, but Carl Jung, I think, hit it the best, talked about this idea of that he called participation mystique. And participation mystique happens when people do get in sync with each other around an object, generally. And a bonfire has that. Now, what was fascinating to me in watching that was, you know, normally we would self-elect the best bonfire master, the person that knew how to build the fire just perfectly, didn't have it too raging or didn't create it where it was down to a flicker. If it was too raging, everybody would have to scramble and run for their life. And if it died down to nothing, it just didn't have that gathering ability. So what I'm very interested in every organization is, who is the bonfire master? who is the person that creates participation mystique? And mystique's a key word, and if we had time, we'd drill into that. But who can create that enchantment and create levels of social bliss? That's what we're really looking for, is this social bliss that can break down those defensive barriers, that can make people want to get along, very similar, as we said, as a movie theater does, and pull people together. And sometimes we think about the chief experience officer or the chief brand officer, but unfortunately, those things get to the spreadsheet too quick, and they don't look at the human dynamic that happens when people gather. And so that concept, I find the bonfire effect and bonfire moments all over the world. I now live on Melrose Avenue. Our office is right off Melrose Avenue. I look down and I see bonfires everywhere, but I see them all around the world. And again, this gets back to the idea of not really measuring architecture through its aesthetics or through object making, but really measuring it through its ability to facilitate good social behaviors or pro-social behaviors.
One thing that I have noticed is when, as a consultant, I try to, I'm selling, developers the opportunity to create experiences for their residents, whether it's making sure that we're working with the architects that to make sure that they look at form and function instead of just form. And you talked about this at one time, and this is something I'm very passionate about, is when a community or clubhouse is created, a lot of times they put a welcome center in there. And the welcome center has, the pictures and everything. But there have been times when I have gone in and it's so focused on just the marketing aspect.
Yeah.
It's not there for life after marketing.
Yeah.
And so it's not really functional. And so you don't have, people using it, and it's not activated. And one thing I have noticed is in my experience, and I've had great developers in my life who showed me the power of activating a space and how people want to see other people experiencing that space because it gives them confirmation this place is safe. And I joke about it because I went into a hotel one time and I had booked this hotel sight unseen, and I get in there and it's like a massive convention size hotel. And I walk in and I'm the only one in there besides the lady helping me at the front desk.
Yeah.
And the fountain is going and I'm looking around like, am I safe? Like, this is eerie. And long story short, I wasn't safe. I ended up having to check out of the hotel. It was a horrible experience. But that first impression told me everything I needed to know.
Yeah.
And I think that drives a lot of people, whether they want to buy a house, like you were saying, the experience of being put in front of a TV.
Yeah.
And so talking about how the bonfire effect can actually, it doesn't have to be like a one event kind of thing. It can really be where you can pull people together in a way that helps them see what their life can be like there, I guess. Is that making sense?
No, it does. I mean, there's so many points to really hit, but the consumers are just continually getting more sophisticated. That's just the nature of the world. Now with AI, but even before that with Google, people just become more and more aware of all the techniques, and everybody's an influencer now. Everybody has a personal brand. I mean, people are very knowledgeable in comparison to where they were 50 years ago or 40 years ago. And so they get the marketing photos. They know what it's about and they don't buy it. So our nose for sniffing out selling, and pushing versus pulling is very, very adept. And so we don't like the happy picture images. If we can show real images of people, that is certainly what we always want to do. But sometimes even the question of images is that even the right way? And really what you need are spaces that can be programmed for that social proof I talked about. And how can we help people imagine the possibilities of how their life will be improved, bettered, or enhanced by moving in here? that is our job as developers or home builders or architects is, we're to pull people into our stories and get them engrossed and get them to care about what we care about. And sometimes that's what I generally find the problem is that developers care about something and consumers care about something, but those cares need to match. They need to intertwine. Yes. And the consumer will smell when those cares don't intertwine. And it does take a little bending on both parts, because sometimes we have to get people to care about something they didn't initially care about, which is what a movie director does, right? Mm-hmm. How many movies have you seen that were controversial? You debated whether you'd be able to get into it, and you walked out a changed person. Mm-hmm. That is when you really become enlightened. And, Whole Foods did that to us in the 90s, right? A lot of people were like, I don't know, I can't buy Tide, Joy, Diet Coke, Crest. It took them a long time to say, this is worth it. But they seduced you really well with compelling food theater and pulled you in. And mm-hmm. that is the job. That first scene is the biggest hurdle to get customers over. We call it the arrival scene. And the arrival scene varies from every development. It could be out before you walk in, even the whole development, or it could be the first step you get in. But getting that arrival scene just right is everything. Or I don't know if you ever walked out on a movie before, but, I've walked out on a couple, 30 minutes in, and I'm like, this just isn't going to be it for me. Yeah. Because it couldn't pull me into that scene. Mm-hmm. Going back to that, though, really breaking those scenes down and then figuring out the values. And that scene, what are you trying to tell me? Mm-hmm. If you think about what a movie that's been adapted from a book, it's a very hard challenge, because a book, it can't be done in an hour and a half. If you were to take a book and write a movie, it would be a whole series, 10 hours. But to make it a movie, you have to go, what are the pivotal scenes? The pivotal scenes are always value scenes. We have the same challenge. We have guests coming to our place, our development. They're going to visit for so much time. What are the 3 scenes we need to tell them? I generally recommend my clients try not to do more than 3 to 8 scenes, believe it or not. I'm like, focus on 3 to 8 scenes and pull out scenes that don't say anything. There is no scene, and go, well, let's take that out. And then make sure your scenes connect to an overarching moral of the story.
And that brings us to the end of part 1 of our conversation with Kevin Kelley. As you can tell, the insights and wisdom Kevin shared were just too good, too important, and too insightful to keep under 45 minutes. That's why we've decided to turn this single episode into a special 3-part series.
Be sure to join us next week for part 2, where we pick up right where we left off. And the week after that, in part 3, Monica and I will be diving deep into the actionable takeaways and discussing how to apply Kevin's vision to your own role as a community creator and placemaker. You won't want to miss that episode either. Thank you again for tuning in to Lifestyle Unplugged. We'll see you next week for part 2 with Kevin Kelley.